Welcome once again to the Jeff Rude Real Estate channel. On this channel, I share insights and opinions about my three professional pursuits: real estate law, real estate sales, and virtual real estate. This is my second real estate law video. It is a follow-up to my video called Legal Documentation for Typical Commercial Real Estate Acquisition Loans in Florida. Smooth, right? In that video, inspired by the movie Bridesmaids starring Kristen Wiig, I walked you through the tensions and goals of the lender on the one hand and the borrower slash buyer, Kristen Wiig, on the other hand. And she didn't go this far in the movie, but if she wanted to borrow money from a bank to buy real property to use as a bakery. I described the key loan documents, which were the loan agreement, promissory note, personal guarantee, mortgage in Florida, the UCC financing statement, and the closing statement. I also described the key purchase and sale documents, which are the PSA, the deed, general assignment, and the title insurance policy, and some matters there. I closed the video by promising to film a video about documentation, formalities, and tools like e-recording and remote online notarization. And that would present a fuller picture of the actual process on the day of closing a deal like that. So this is that promised video. First, I'll walk you through the traditional formalities and requirements as far as signing, witnessing, notarizing the documents, and how to record them. But then I will summarize the new school methods, which I'm pleased to say are statutorily recognized as legal in Florida, and they're becoming more and more popular, especially as you work on more institutional loans with banks, as opposed to private loans or loans with people who only do issue one or two loans a year, things like that. So the traditional documentation formalities. Let's set the stage. The seller, the buyer, borrower, and the bank like loan officer will meet at a lawyer's office. It could be a lawyer for any of those parties, or even at the bank without a lawyer there, or at the title insurance company. So the traditional, we're doing the traditional route and the loan documents and how they're signed and things like that. So the loan agreement requires signatures from the borrower and the bank. No witnesses or notary needed. The promissory note requires a signature from the borrower. If you're, as I recommended, the promissory note should be pretty to the point and shouldn't have covenants that the lender has to follow. Those should all be in the loan agreement, in my opinion. So that's why the promissory note only requires signature from the borrower. The personal guarantee requires signature just from the borrower. The mortgage requires signature from the borrower, and importantly, it must be notarized because it will be recorded. The financing statement to the state or to the county, often you'll do both, but definitely you'll want one to the state. No signatures are needed on that document. And the closing statement should have the signatures from all three parties if you're doing a consolidated closing statement. So the buyer slash borrower, the lender, and the seller. And the purchase and sale documents now under the traditional closing tools and documents. The purchase and sale agreement requires signature from the seller and the buyer. The deed requires a signature from the seller and two witnesses, and those witnesses will often be like employees at the office where the closing occurs. So you'll say, hey, can you run in here and witness this deed? And you'll also need a notary. So deed, two signatures, or two witnesses and a notary, and the signature from the seller. The general assignment document requires a signature from the seller, and if it's an assignment and assumption agreement where the buyer's taking on duties, you'll also want the signature of the buyer. Then the title insurance policy is issued by the title insurance company, and the buyer and lender will get this like a couple weeks later normally. Especially now with the title insurance company so busy with all the deal work going on, they're taking a while, but that's okay. And the recording process, the traditional recording process, per an agreed closing instruction letter, which will be negotiated among all the parties, the title insurance company or one of the attorneys will mail or courier to the county recording office, which is often in the courthouse. They'll courier the deed, the mortgage, and anything else that needs to be recorded, often resolutions on corporate authority or title matters. And the UCC financing statement to the state is then faxed or mailed or couriered. Okay, now the exciting part, the new methods and technology that are recognized under Florida law and becoming more common, thankfully. So the traditional versus the new school methods, I've separated into three areas, three things you can think about. One, wet ink versus digital signatures. You'll hear that expression, wet ink. Two, seller, buyer, notary, and witness in the room versus everyone on their own computers in their offices or at their house with audio and video. It's like a highly structured Zoom call. And three, recording by mail or courier versus e-recording by scanning the documents. So on the wet ink versus digital signature divide, the Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, which was adopted in Florida by Chapter 668, basically says electronic signatures have the same legal effect as traditional handwritten signatures. That's 668.50. In order for that statute to apply, each party to the contract must agree to conduct the transaction electronically. You may want to get them all to agree to conduct the transaction electronically through a wet ink signature, because otherwise it gets a little circular. The electronic signatures can be done through programs like DocuSign. That's the popular one, not sponsored. So that covers electronic signatures, but what about the notaries? Is Florida similarly modern in that respect? Yes. Chapter 117, Florida statutes, has always governed notaries, and it was changed with a big Part 2 section so that beginning in January 2020, remote online notarization is legal if performed under the exacting standards of the statute by a properly accredited notary. And in fact, the notary block now, which is within the statute, the notary blocks basically have to put a checkbox to say whether you've done it in person or online notarization. So how does the notary process work? The notary vendors have their own software, and the title insurance companies will approve it as being compliant with the law or not, and therefore good enough for the title insurance company to actually provide insurance over it. As the consumer, you don't really need to worry about whether about these details. That's what the title insurance is for. The software allows you to digitally sign, digitally witness, and receive the digital notary stamp all in one platform. The remote online notarization vendor will email all the parties, which has a link for the parties to register and verify their identity, which includes scanning your ID or holding it up to the screen and answering all sorts of questions about you. Really better than the old system. It has a multi-factor test where they take information from all the data aggregators and like give you those multiple choice questions where they're like, which of these addresses have you lived in the past 10 years? And an address that you may have even forgotten about that you lived in, you'll see it and you'll recognize it, be like, oh yeah, I lived there. So it's really more secure than the old system where they used to just take your driver's license and look at if it looks like you. So once you register, you could view all the documents and you could sign electronically all the documents that you don't need a notary for, and there's a little stylized picture of your signature that you'll add So after you do that, you'll get a prompt to join the live audio-visual meeting with a notary. And then the notary will jump on the shared screen with you, and they'll show you the different documents that you have to sign. And they'll walk you through it, and they'll ask, do you understand? Where they can't answer specific questions about a document, but often the loan officer, their lawyers, they'll be in on that live video, so you could ask them questions. The notary will then add their notary seal, and it pops up, and you're done. And you could download, this is awesome, you could download everything right away, so you don't have to wait for copies to be made. You could just download fully executed notarized things right there. Now, e-recording to county official records. Law firms or title companies contract with third-party vendors who have agreements in place with the county. The UCCs are filed with the state, that are filed with the state can be done online through the state's vendor. So the law firm will then scan the documents and send them to the vendor, or in the case of remote online notary, if you do it all through the remote online notary, you just send your vendor the downloaded versions of those filled out documents. The vendor then coordinates with the county recording office and will send you to get the documents recorded in the official records, and will send you confirmations that the e-recording is in process. And in my experience, it goes quite smoothly. These vendors know what they're doing. They have a lot of money invested to get their software to go smoothly, and it's a competitive industry, so they don't want to lose an account with a law firm or a big title company. And what's cool is you don't have to worry about tracking a package or wondering about delays with the mail if you do e-recording, which is especially important around the holidays when the mail is backed up, and that happens to be when a lot of real estate closings occur. So the county recording departments and the mail, they're maybe understaffed. When you do it e-recording, you don't have to worry about those things. I want to conclude with some tips, some practice pointers. Keep in mind, as always, the bank has the money, so they call the shots. Often the bank, because they have so much experience closing loans every day and a big technology budget, they may be more modernized than your law firm or even the title company, and they'll be comfortable with electronic closings and things like that. So just be patient with the various parties and lawyers trying to get comfortable with the closing mechanics. Like most things, talking out these procedures well in advance of the day of closing will make things go more smoothly. Now, last tips. As for recording, not only do counties have their own formal rules, but they have their different customs, and your job is to respect the folks at the recording office. These are the county employees that work at the courthouse often. Call them in advance, ask them specifically what is the best, fastest, easiest for them, what do they prefer. They'll say, you could do this, you could do that. Say, I want to do this most smoothly and easiest for you. What's the best way? To my lawyers out there, I've found that government employees may be uncomfortable talking to lawyers, and your instincts may be to sort of ask a bunch of follow-up questions that make them uncomfortable. So you should really consider asking your assistant to make the call and to the county recording office to ask your questions, and write out your questions so your assistant knows exactly what to ask and nothing gets lost in translation. And if you have it written out for your assistant, it'll make your assistant a lot more comfortable making the call, and they could say, I'm just asking the questions my boss asked me to ask. Okay, so that concludes the video. I hope you found it helpful, and thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. As always, please be kind to yourself and each other.